This conference will now be recorded.
Good luck. I'm out there right now.
Unmuted. Waynes, Nichols, can you hear me?
Yes, sir, we can. Welcome, Senator.
Thank you. I'll turn it back on to mute.
Well, good morning, everyone. I want to thank you for participating in our 7th COVID-19 weekly conference call. For those of you that don't know who I am, I'm Wayne Mitchell. I'm the president and CEO of the Nacogdoches County Chamber of Commerce. I want you to know that we're recording this call and that it will be available later this afternoon on the Nacogdoches County Chamber website for anyone that couldn't join us today. I would respectfully ask that you put your microphones on mute until we get ready for questions at some point. The Chamber has a wealth of information on the Chamber website, www.nacogdoches.org. Please visit the COVID-19 website. Yesterday, I do want to let you folks know that we sent out a survey to our membership, and the preliminary results were quite interesting, I thought. One of the questions was, how has your business returned to normal schedule since the COVID-19 outbreak? And a surprising number of 67.8% of the businesses say they have not yet returned to a normal schedule. Second question was, what is the greatest challenge your business faces today? Overwhelmingly, the regulatory environment or regulations are the biggest challenge, with 48.1% of the business responding saying they were a challenge. Another question was, have you visited the COVID-19 business resource guide on the Chamber website? And 67.8% said they have visited it. That's an impressive number. And then, have you established new guidelines for your employees in response to the COVID-19 outbreak? 92.3% of the respondents in the business said that they have established internal policies. We'll continue to monitor the feedback from these surveys and feed that information to you as it becomes available a little later this week. This past week, we've seen some progress as businesses are allowed to re-engage with their customers on a limited basis. The Chamber's now open 5 days a week, and we're assessing our member needs during this phase of the recovery and making the necessary changes to our strategic plan. We'll be sharing the results of the survey and present them to the Chamber Executive Committee a little later this week for consideration. We invite anyone on this call to share with us any recommendations on how we can serve our members more effectively during this challenging period. Again, feel free to let us know what you're hearing and what you need, and we certainly will respond accordingly. We'll begin now with our first presenter, and I'm
2 dozen donut holes, 1 chocolate milk, and 1 apple juice.
Okay, Ted, you got that order in. I'll be right with you.
Man, hey, it says mute. My phone says mute. I don't know why it's not. Y'all can hear me?
Yeah, I could hear you. But I'm going up.
I just got my donuts.
Hey, Ted, no more donuts now.
Well, believe it or not, they're for my kids in the back seat.
Where did I lose this call?
All right, I'm trying to mute again, guys. Sorry.
Okay, Ted. I'm pleased to welcome the Chief Executive Officer of the Texas Association of Business, Jeff Moseley. Mr. Moseley represents the largest association in Texas with over 2,800 members. I've known Jeff for over 3 years, and I can say that Texas businesses could not have a better advocate at the home of our state association. Would you fellows please welcome with me Jeff Moseley. Good morning, Jeff.
Good morning, Wayne. What a delight to be with you. And only thing that'd be better is if I was actually in Nacogdoches. And it was not too long ago I was with you and with Senator Nichols and Representative Clardy for the wonderful legislative conference that you guys do every year. And I was signed up to be with you in April of this year. And we know that life does get in the way, and things have certainly changed since we were last together. But thank you for this time to just catch up and compare field notes. And I look forward to hearing as well from you and from your members, because there's no playbook, is there? Nobody's ever been able to navigate these paths. Interestingly enough, my grandmother, Grandma Mosley, lived to be 105, and she grew up in Coryell County, Central Texas, in a very remote part of the county in Pearl, Texas. And she told me about the Spanish flu. And she remembered as a 12-year-old child that they really felt pretty isolated, protected, because they were in a rural county in a very small village. But she went on to say that the virus came into Pearl through the mail carrier, and it really had a very hard-hitting impact on their community, including the loss of their country doctor. And so that's my only vague recollection of what this impact was to our state in 1918. And here we are, 2020, navigating through these very uncertain times. But the good news is we have a lot more technology, and we do have a lot more science and a lot more medical understanding of how to work through this challenge. And they just didn't have that in 1918. And so we know that there is some basis for us to have a sense of how to get through the virus. And since we're Texans, we know we will. We have that wonderful, strong Texas can-do attitude. And so we'll make it through this somehow. But I don't think anybody on the call today would disagree. We'll be different. And the way we look at the world will be different, the way we do business. And of course, that's where we are so appreciative of our state leaders and of Senator Nichols and Representative Clardy and of our governor and our lieutenant governor. For aren't we grateful we live in a state where our leadership listens and cares about how businesses operate. And we're seeing that very challenging, difficult balance right now, but an important discussion of how do we take care and follow the medical professionals? How do we make sure that we look at the data? We've heard Governor Abbott say that over and over in his press conferences. We've heard the Lieutenant Governor talk about that. And at the same time, how do we make sure that, the prescribed cure isn't more fatal than the virus itself? Where's that fine point, that fine line? We at the Texas Association of Business have really thrown open our doors. We're so proud of the Nacogdoches Chamber being a member of the TAB. And our website has a COVID toolbox on it, as I know you guys are doing these weekly calls. I salute you, Wayne, and your team for just having a check-in. I think that's so important to have the ability just to listen and hear, because we're all learning this together. We provide these tools as we learn them, and so please go to our website, see if there's something there that's useful, or if it's not there, would you let us know so we can make it available to others? That's for members and non-members alike. We're just there to really serve and try to take care of any small business or large business as much as we're able to pass along solid information. The challenge that chambers are facing is pretty fascinating, and that is that when the payroll protection plan was authorized, there was at one point in that discussion a broad definition of nonprofit, which included C6 corporations, which chambers operate under, including our association. And during the course of those discussions, that definition of nonprofit was narrowed to only include C3s. And then, of course, we know churches and other organizations were included for a safety net, but chambers as C6s have been left out. So we have been working with our friends across the state, and we've been working with Wayne and with others to make sure that the U.S. Chamber of Commerce has full information on how chambers can use a safety net. At least we'd like to have that option, wouldn't we? And we'd also like to make sure, that C6s are recognized for building the fabric of our local economy and working alongside to make sure that government is helping business as much as they're able, and that businesses are helping government. And the chambers have played this wonderful function and have a dynamic history in our communities. And so it'd be a real shame if there wasn't some form of a safety net to help out. So that's what we're communicating. Senator Cornyn and Senator Cruz have agreed, and they've been very open about the value of bringing C6s into the next opportunity to have a safety net for small businesses. So stay tuned on that. I'll use a journalism term on you. We're cautiously optimistic that C6s will be included. Perhaps we'll see something in the next 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 6 weeks, whenever that next funding tranche comes through. As it relates to the task force that the governor and lieutenant governor have put together, we've been very involved in both of those. In fact, our incoming chair, Massey Villarreal out of Houston, a small business owner, was announced by Governor Abbott as a member of his task force. He'll be TAB's chair in 2022, which will be our 100-year birthday party, Wayne. And this upcoming year in 2021, Brent Ryan was asked by the lieutenant governor to chair the lieutenant governor's Back to Work task force. And so we've been very involved in both of those working groups. Brent asked me to be a special advisor. I was honored to be a part of his task force that the lieutenant governor organized, and it's been really a pleasure to listen in and to see how that group has worked. And the lieutenant governor spent a lot of time on the phone call. But the area that I've been bringing a group of advisors together is on trade and supply chain. And we do know that the USMCA that the administration approved has a wonderful opportunity for our state as we look on the other side of this tunnel that we're in, and we look at coming out and reviving our economy and getting people back to work. We know that USMCA is this solid document that really can help us grow jobs in Texas. And specifically, imagine this, the manufacturing that has migrated over the last 2 decades, the offshore, the reshore, the nearshore opportunities are phenomenal for our great state, especially with USMCA, because a lot of those manufacturers that have gone to Asia are necessarily going to be looking for a place to come back and operate. So that's something that we've had a chance to just work through on our little working group, again, on trade and supply chain. The Lieutenant Governor's Chief of Policy, John Gibbs, was a part of that discussion. So stay tuned. The Lieutenant Governor will make his own release of the report, but I'm again hopeful that some of these concepts of how Texas can really leverage off of USMCA would be very strategic and useful as we put Texas back to work. And lastly, I would just say this and in closing, and be glad to in a few minutes try to answer any comments or questions. I would say that we've been very supportive of Senator Nichols and House Transportation Chair Canales on asking TxDOT to hit the pause button as they look at their unified transportation plan. We felt like that if the commission wanted to go forward with building mega projects, that was a very good thing for the commission to do. But we also wanted to make sure that they saw the value of using a tool that the legislature approved and gave TxDOT, and that's for mega projects, allowing a local community to decide if private investment is useful. Specifically, the commission had looked at bringing not a discretionary money, category 12 money, into one project in the state, and that was I-35, and kind of sweeping that money from around the state and using it on one project. We thought that was a great idea to focus on this choke point, but we also just said, look, there's no reason to use that, all that public money that's so precious. Why not go back and use what's been used already in the state to build about $10 billion of roads by letting the local community use private investment? So that's why we stand behind the decision of just saying, wait, there's no rush on the UTP. You're just about 60 days away from another one. Let's kind of take a measured response to that. Our committees, Wayne, have, again, like you, we've kind of shifted to this technology platform. They've been very invigorated and are looking forward at the 2021 legislative session. And so for those of you who have policy interest in education and workforce, employment relations, healthcare, immigration, economic development, energy, we've got committees that are meeting now and talking about these issues and preparing for the upcoming legislative session. Wayne, thank you so much for this very kind and generous invitation to bring some comments into your meeting at this very opening of your session.
Well, Jeff, it's really an honor to have you. Could you take a couple of questions?
Sure.
I've got one here that was submitted. There's no doubt about the serious nature of the coronavirus. Our governments and our society need to take steps to mitigate the spread of this and other serious contagious diseases. As an attorney and a judge, are you concerned that federal government, state or local governments forcing businesses to close is a serious violation of our constitutional rights?
Well, first of all, let me say that I served as a county judge, and I even served for 4 years as a justice of the peace, but I did that as an elected office holder, and I'm not an attorney. How about that? So I can give you a legal opinion, but it's not based on any formal legal training. I had the benefit of getting trained in the law by the state for those areas that I was a judicial officer, but I'm not an attorney. And I think that's a very significant question. And I think that's where our governor and lieutenant governor get tremendous high marks for understanding this balance. Because as the governor has said, we want to make sure that we understand, since this isn't 1918, and we do have the benefit of a lot of wonderful technology and best practices in medicine. And Texas, of course, is renowned for its medical facilities throughout the state, but especially in the Texas Medical Center in the Dallas area. We've got some of the most outstanding medical professionals. So what an asset we have to get a sense of what the virus can and cannot do and how we can do things. But we want to make sure that there's a balance to that, don't we? And that's where I appreciate so much that the governor and lieutenant governor are saying, look, let's let the businesses find a way where they can invite the public to come back and use the best practices and to do things. They're going to be different. I know when I go to the grocery store, I'm putting on a face mask. I'm wearing gloves. I'm standing behind arrows. I wait for the cashier to take care of their business before I go up to pay. More than likely, that's the way we're going to see business over the next year or so until we get an actual response to the virus. But until the data shows that that's not healthy, businesses should be allowed to operate in those manners. And then again, as the governor says, let's follow the data. And where we see a spike in that data, we need to go back and understand what behaviors might need to be modified to protect the public's health.
Thank you, Jeff. Any questions from any of our folks on the call?
Wayne, this is Nancy. Hey, Jeff, this is Nancy Windham. How are you? And thank you for being with us this morning.
Hi, Nancy.
This is more of a statement. You're with this morning people in leadership and practitioners in the East Texas rural area And you are very well connected and tied in with leadership and state government and different entities. Just remember rural Texas, which I know that you do, but rural East Texas and the Forest Country region provides so many assets and diversify the state. As you're out there and speaking with people and representing areas, don't forget the value that rural East Texas brings to the table when these decisions are being made on how we move forward. And we're working with several groups to put data together to find out what businesses did and did not receive support to stay alive. I'm not talking about to flourish like they were doing, but just to keep their head above the water. So we appreciate your support. I know that you are supporting us out there. I just wanted to make the other statement and to say thank you for remembering our area and what you do.
Well, very kind. And of course, we love rural. And we do know that rural is going to actually serve so many multiple functions with some of the fewest resources. So now more than ever, there does need to be a focus, especially on the rural healthcare facilities. And we've been strong advocates, maybe perhaps you know, of the telemedicine, which is where rural healthcare providers have really leaned on that platform in so many ways. And so we're pleased to step up on wherever there's data and a policy or a shift. If there's bureaucracy that perhaps is in the way for a rural area to function, would you please let us know? And we would welcome, if you do have survey information you'd like to send to us to be used privately or to put out on our website, Wayne, we would welcome that as well.
Thank you, Jeff. And Jeff, one last question. How is TxDOT's proposed projects going to impact the funding of I-69, in your opinion?
Well, that's why we would just say it'd be wonderful if let me back up and just say this. Doesn't seem to be any political will, and hasn't been for a long time, for an increase in motor fuel tax or fees. There hasn't been an interest in issuing bonds. And so given the scarcity of public funds also coming out of the Permian Basin, because those mechanisms, that captured part of the rainy day fund, there's just not opportunities for us to bring more new dollars into transportation financing out of the Permian Basin. So given all these challenges, then why wouldn't we allow for private investors on a local basis be a resource to leverage public money? And pulling all the discretionary public money in to focus on one project, it puts the other projects that have been prioritized by their regional planning groups, it puts them at the back of the line. And it does cause them to have delays. So we would just say we feel like there's a tried, tested, and true formula. And if a local community wants to use it, we've already enjoyed $10 billion of private investment in our highway systems. Of course, the LBJ Expressway, the North Tarrant Expressway, the Grand Parkway in Houston. These are mega projects that have enjoyed private investors, and the private investors come in and take the risk of putting that project together. They are tolled lanes, they're managed lanes, so don't nobody leave the call thinking that private investment doesn't. There's got to be a way for the private investor to get their investment back. So they're using managed lanes and toll lanes to do that. At least we're saying let the local community have that option.
Well, thank you very much, Chairman Mosley. Jeff, I want to thank you and the Texas Association of Business for all of the outstanding work you're doing on our behalf. You're a wonderful partner. You and Tom Donahue at the U.S. Chamber have certainly earned your pay in the last few months and all the months preceding. We're honored to be a partner with you, and we want to thank you for taking time out of your incredible schedule to join us this morning.
Well, thank you, Wayne. God bless Nacogdoches. God bless Texas. God bless the U.S. See you later.
Thank you, Jeff. Thanks again.
Bye-bye.
We will now hear our partner reports, and we'll start with President Scott Gordon from Stephen F. Austin State University. Good morning, Dr. Gordon.
Good morning, everybody. I'd like to build off of Jeff's discussion. Next month in the County Progress magazine, I'll have an article which is basically a call to action. Many of you know that I was involved with I-69 up in Indiana, in a rural area of Indiana. And this past weekend, I was driving down south and noticed the flyway that was being constructed and thought, oh my, the last time I went down this far south, I don't get out much, but the last time I went this far south, it hadn't nearly been completed as much as it has. So they've made a lot of work. And so I got nervous about the fact that we really need to get together, form consortia, and start working on I-69, especially now with, as Jeff indicated, the reshoring of manufacturers and the importance of logistics. And I-69 is going to change this region in East Texas like no other project has. And so I feel as though we need to get moving and get moving quickly. And so this call to action is essentially seeing who's interested in being part of this, as far as K-12, higher ed, business, industry, not-for-profits. We really need a good cross section of the entire region and the communities within the region in order to really make this successful and to bring the highway in a way that we're all proud of, versus some of the interstates you see in other states that have a variety of not so attractive establishments along the roadway. So I just wanted to throw that out there and let everybody know to be looking for that. And if you have interest, you can email me, and we have some folks here at the university. Many of you know Todd Brown, who's in our College of Business, and Tim Bisping, our Dean of Business, who are going to help to kind of organize this. I know Larissa, we're going to be working closely with you and Wayne as well, but we really kind of need to get going on that. So otherwise, at the university, as you all know, summer is going to be completely online. We had some good news in that over the last couple of weeks, our summer enrollment numbers have increased, and we are actually up 8.5% in our enrollment versus last summer. So that's exciting, and we're very pleased and hope that continues to increase for the summer. Too early to tell for fall, but we'll keep folks posted on those numbers. We will be having a virtual graduation on May 30th, and that will be televised, so to speak, on YouTube. So check our website for the link to that, and it'll be up on the website for quite a while. It's not going to necessarily you don't have to see it live. And then we do have an open SFA team that's been very active, looking to see how can we open SFA to students and to get to a good place as far as being ready for fall. And as you know, that's going to be staged, and it's going to be staged much like the governor's Open Texas. We're going to be doing that on a phased basis. So when I get more information on that, I'll let folks know. They have another meeting here today, and should be making some pretty good progress on getting SFA back open. So I'll take any questions.
Any questions for Dr. Gordon?
Dr. Gordon, this is Gary Ashcraft. I keep getting asked questions by people who know everything, or they tell me things. How are we doing with the building projects on the campus?
Yeah, so our Fine Arts Center, which is a $50 million project, that should be breaking ground sometime here in June. And so that's progressing. Our basketball practice facility is doing pretty well. A lot of the in-ground work has been completed, and if you go by there, you'll start to see the walls coming up. So progress there is going pretty well. Also, I just got word today that all of the architectural drawings are completed for our beef farm facility, which will be out on 259, and that should be starting here middle of June, towards maybe the end of June, and that should be mostly complete by the start of fall semester. So things are still progressing pretty well, and it's starting to look dark, so hopefully no rain, because once the rain starts coming, things slow down a bit. So that's where those projects are.
Thank you, sir.
Dr. Gordon, Scott Waller, when do you anticipate some of the staff members will start to migrate back to their offices on campus?
Yeah, so actually today was the first day that staff who are performing what we refer to as essential duties, like getting some deep cleans done, can report to work. What we are doing is allowing, not really allowing, we're asking folks who can telecommute to continue telecommuting. And actually that has worked out very well for us with this, with not only this situation, but at some point we'll probably even have some discussions about what kinds of folks should be allowed to telecommute in a normal situation. So today's kind of a phase one of getting things back open with some of our physical plant staff, especially cleaning staff, on board, and then we're going to go from there as far as bringing folks who are telecommuting back. But we're going to be playing that by ear.
Thank you.
Well, Dr. Gordon, thank you very much for that report, sir. And we really appreciate all the efforts you folks are involved with over there.
Thank you.
Next, we'll hear from the Office of the Governor's Representative Betty Russo. Good morning, Betty. We will, apparently Betty is not on the call at the moment. If she joins us later, we'll bring her back. I'm also pleased to say that we have with us Senator Robert Nichols and Representative Travis Clardy, and to give us an update on the region.
It's Robert Nichols. Can you hear me? You can hear me. Okay, I see your head nodding. I was going to touch on 3 areas. One is testing. As y'all know, roaming testing, we now have that, so they're going county to county to county, and they're testing 2 categories of people. First category is those with symptoms. Second category is anybody who works for an essential business who wants to be tested, can be tested without having symptoms. You do have to call and get reservations. I don't see a schedule for Nacogdoches County yet, but I know they've had counties fairly close to you. On the counts for testing, the amount of testing is going up dramatically. The latest number I saw was we have tested 407,000 people. If you go back to approximately a week ago, it was 267. So that's more than 100,000 tests in 1 week. So it's really picking up quite a bit. The statistics seem to stay about the same. About 10% of everybody tested shows up positive, whether they have symptoms or not. Second category I thought I'd talk about are the prisons. I know you do not have a prison, but you've got some adjacent to you in Russ County. I've got 10 prisons in Senate District 3. There are 1,275 positive cases in our prison system. And the reason I say that is that your correctional officers work in from Nacogdoches County, do leave there and go work in those systems. And our guards tested 461 tested positive. When they test positive, they don't have to go to work, obviously, and they quarantine for a couple of weeks. The last thing I wanted to mention has to do with sales tax. The comptroller announced that the April sales tax down 9%. from the same April last year. The reason I talk about finance is that the sales tax is 56% of the general revenues of the state. So that is one of the largest numbers we use to balance, work with our budget. Now, when you break that down, the April receipts were the receipts by the state. Those were actually sales tax that were generated during the month of March. And we know the first 2 weeks of March were a lot different than the last 2 weeks of March. So I'm guessing that the receipts in May will be dramatically down again, because now we'll have a full month of shutdown on our hands. And so I'm on the finance committee and I'm on the conference committee for the budget last session. I anticipate that the lieutenant governor will reappoint me to that. And so we are trying to analyze, which is not typical in a non-session year, where we are on the budget and the things that we're going to see. Simultaneous with the sales tax and the impacts to our businesses and workforce, or the oil patch. And the reason I mention that is the oil and gas severance tax, the receipts that the state gets 25% go to public education, higher ed, and that's constitutionally protected. So when gas or oil goes from 60 to 20, those revenues are down 2/3 based on that, but your production is also down. So your production is down. Well, they're capping off wells as fast as they can. So let's say that's down another half. So you're down to 1/6 receipts from oil and gas. But the oil and gas industry also, your set transportation around the state is also impacted dramatically. It's all 30%, not only statewide, but nationwide, that it impacts transportation fuel taxes, which is your state funding, and your federal funding also comes. So there's going to be some pretty big hits to the state budget. We don't know what they're all going to be yet, but I can tell you we're studying them, and it's looking pretty ugly. What we're not sure about is what type of federal funds are coming in. We're still analyzing that. Some of those funds are coming directly to counties and cities and hospitals. I know that our local hospitals there in Nacogdoches did receive some funds, and we're trying to get a breakdown federally what all's coming in. And so basically, that's my report. Shortly, I will have to leave, and I've got a conference call with the comptroller after this. So if anybody has any questions of me, I'm wide open.
Thank you, Senator Nichols. Any questions for Senator Nichols? If not, Senator, thank you very much. We appreciate your participation on these calls. Representative Clardy, good morning.
There we go. Good morning. Great to be here, and thank you for the invitation. Senator Nichols, thank you for that update on the numbers. The one thing I truly do appreciate about Senator Nichols, we can always count on him to give us the unvarnished truth, regardless how difficult it may be to hear some of those numbers. But I think he's spot on his analysis. But I tend to be optimistic. I'm a glass full to overflowing guy. I think the bad news is, look at our local numbers on infections. It seems to, the bad news is it's not going down, at least in Nacogdoches County or the other counties. But the good news is it's relatively flat. I do think we've been successful flattening the curve, and the numbers are stable. I think we're all collectively holding our breath in this period of reopening the state economy. So we're a little bit into our 2.5 week period to phase 2. But that's the lead time. What we're doing now will not be reflected in the numbers until the next 10 days. And so we're all hoping that the numbers will stay flat and actually start to decline, but time will tell. I would just encourage, I've been saying this a lot to everybody, that this is the time we need a little patience with each other and to show a larger measure of grace with each other. It seems like everything is more polarized than it's been in a long, long time, and it's either black or white, right or wrong. And I think what Scott Fitzgerald said, that one of the indications of a high intelligence is the ability to hold two competing thoughts in your mind at the same time. And I would suggest to all of us that the people that say we should shut the economy down and not reopen, that we can't risk the reinfection and see the spike in the numbers, those people are right. That's a valid point of view. And those of us who feel strongly that we need to reopen the economy, it's time to get back to normal, are right. Those are not, it's what's the phrase, cognitive dissonance. They're not wrong or mutually exclusive. They both have merit. But let's let this process work out. Be a little patient. Let's don't jump to demonize one side that you may not happen to agree with totally. We've got to find the middle ground. And I think in Nacogdoches, we're blessed to have a whole bunch of people that think a little differently, look a little differently in the morning by looks of the cameras. All of you look lovely, by the way. So let's just kind of hang in there and let's let this process work out. I do want to shift gears on a little personal privilege here. With the center gave us some difficult numbers that we're going to be grappling with, but there are some very good numbers to show you. And this I would offer as Exhibit 1. If you can see this, let me get over. Where's my camera? I got to find how the camera works. There you go. I'd like to welcome the newest Clardy boy to the world. That's little Nolan Travis. Now, if you notice that picture of my son Blake, that's not a shoestring or a phone cord hanging from it. That's the umbilical cord. They had a home birth. I find it pretty interesting that our kids from rural East Texas have to go to the Upper East Side of Manhattan to have a frontier baby born on the floor at home. And so all are doing very, very well. Let me give you, here is now here's your first COVID baby picture. I noticed this. This is at Mount Sinai in Manhattan. After the EMTs, they took them there and everything's fine. But notice everybody's masked up and mom was wearing rubber gloves. I think that's the first time I've ever seen one of those pictures. So it's been a fascinating time. And for all the difficult things that are going on in the world, I would just ask that all of us adopt the attitude of Nolan's big brother, Liam, who seems to be pretty happy with the arrival of his big brother. So with that, I will yield my time back. I would remind everybody this Friday, I'll be doing my Facebook live show, 3 o'clock. We'd invite you to come on, think of your questions. We'll be promoting this out and letting you know what's there. And we'll try to address those issues specific to Cherokee, Ruskin, Nacogdoches counties. But again, I think we're all in just kind of a little bit of a holding pattern. We're holding our breath, but I would suggest, much like my daughter-in-law Leah, it's time to breathe. Just we're holding our breath, worried about the numbers. Let's just all breathe calmly. We're going to come through this, and I really do expect what we're doing is working in Texas. I think our numbers are going to flatten. The weather's getting warmer. Things are going to be better, and we may not be at the beginning of the end. We're at the end of the beginning. So let's just all hang in there. So any questions, happy to answer. You can shoot it to me, text me. Y'all know how to find me. And thanks again for letting me represent you.
Thank you, Representative Clardy, and congratulations on that wonderful news. Great news. We will now hear from the Nacogdoches Economic Development Corporation's President and CEO. Would you welcome Larissa Philpot? Good morning, Larissa.
Good morning, Wayne. Hi, friends. Today, I wanted to go over just a few things. I know that I have talked a lot about the PPP program and EIDL loans. Since most of that money has gone out, what I'm going to cover today is how to get your loan forgiveness. Everybody was overjoyed at the PPP program being a forgivable loan, and now you all have to figure out how to make it forgivable, because if you don't follow the rules, it becomes a loan and you don't have to pay that money back. So the first thing is figure out your maximum amount of loan forgiveness. So that's determined by what you spent in the 8 weeks after the loan was originated. And that's what you spent on payroll, utilities, rent, and interest on debt. So that's your maximum loan forgiveness. 75% of that has to be on payroll. So that would be your maximum amount. Now, that maximum amount gets reduced a little bit if you reduce staff, if you reduce your wages by more than 20%. So obviously the point of this is that you bring your employees back on your payroll. And you say, Larissa, what if I don't have work for my employees? This is absurd and we're not doing anything. The goal of the program was to help you pay your employees so that they were not filing through the unemployment system if you could possibly keep them on the payroll. So what do we want you to do? We want you to train. There are lots of resources out there for that. There are regional resources that we can get you connected with as far as training goes. Acts of service. Is there something that your employees can do for a partner business or for something in the community? We can come up with something. If you've got a whole bunch of employees and you said, I'm paying them and we got nothing for them to do, let me know and we'll find a community service project for them. This one I thought was really fun, reaching out to parents that are homeschooling. You know, we've all heard this joke that we're so glad that we learned trigonometry in high school, but we never learned how to file our taxes or how to balance a checkbook. If you know how to file taxes and balance a checkbook, make a homeschool lesson, put it online. If things that your employees are experts at, put those out online as homeschool lessons and push them out. What a great way to reach people that have never been your customers before and introduce your company to them. We've had some questions about, you know, I'm ready to open, but my employees don't want to come. They say that they're anxious. What do I do? Again, I'm not an attorney, but I have been told if your employee has just a general anxiety and it is not, they do not have any COVID symptoms and they do not have a child out of school at home that they are required to care for, that is not a justifiable CARES Act reason for not coming to work. I know that it's difficult to hear and it is difficult to say, but before you take action, before you use a legal hammer to solve an HR crisis, think about why they're anxious about coming in. Is it that you maybe don't have the greatest sanitation system at work? Or is it that you have a great sanitation system and you didn't tell them? Think about why they don't want to come to work, and maybe it will help you step up your game as far as making your business safer for your employees and for your customers that are coming. With that, let me just go over unemployment numbers real fast. They are moving down. The new unemployment claims are moving downward, which is good. It's likely an indicator that most of the people who are eligible have already filed. But that means we've got a pretty good snapshot of who we're going to see filing for unemployment. We only had 302 new claims last week. That's still about 10 times as many claims as we had for the same period last year. So not a happy number, but COVID, and so we are happy about that. With that, I will turn it back to Wayne.
Thank you very much, Larissa. We appreciate all you're doing over there. Would you welcome with me the Chief Executive Officer of the Texas Forest Country Partnerships, Nancy Windham. Good morning, Nancy.
Good morning. Betty, since Betty wasn't on the phone, our last Friday call is we are continuing to connect with the different agencies to keep our region first and foremost in their minds, working on ways in which we can develop new data that would keep us, keep everyone else focused on what we are doing and not able to do, or what we're able to do and not being recognized for. I gave the report on the survey at last week's call. This is the survey from the Economic Development and Tourism Office before Governor Abbott's last announcement on reopening Texas. We're taking it to a different level. We're taking those particular surveys and dissecting them into the smallest of businesses and how they were able to or not able to communicate with that survey results. So like I had mentioned earlier, we really want to build our case that we have for data to substantiate the reason that we did not get assistance like other areas of the state that's more populated. So that's what we're working on right now, and I'll end my report, and if anybody has any questions, we'll be more than happy to. As you see, This is the first call of the first day in our new office. We have moved into NEDCO's office. There on Kurth Drive in Lufkin. We have an office dedicated to economic development, and we're pleased to be here and appreciate the partnership with NEDCO and representing all 12 of our counties in rural Texas. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Nancy. And again, any of our presenters, if anybody has any specific questions, I'd encourage you to email them, and I'm confident that they all will respond. We will now hear from Sherry Morgan, the Executive Director of the Nacogdoches Convention and Visitors Bureau. Good morning, Sherry.
Good morning. This week is National Travel and Tourism Week. And it's a week set aside just to assess, look around, see what your tourism assets are, celebrate those businesses, and recognize the tremendous economic driver that tourism is. The theme this year is the spirit of travel, the wonder and the wander of it all. Travel and tourism is really important for mental health, for physical health, and economic health, most importantly. And as always, I like to remind everybody that direct traveler spending in 2018 in Nacogdoches County allotted to upwards of $86 million. So it's important, and it is now more important than ever because tourism is going to be really at the forefront of our economic recovery. And that's kind of what I want to focus on primarily in my report this morning. During this public health crisis, we can choose to either focus on what we can't do, what we have lost, or we can make the conscious choice to look for what we have gained and are continuing to gain through this process. It's an appreciation of social interaction, of human touch, of our service industry, for the conveniences. It's realizing that we have forgotten skills. Some of us forgot that we knew how to cook, or that we really do understand math as we reach out and try and, assist in the homeschooling of our children. We've garnered new perspectives of old surroundings that may have fallen by the wayside of being taken for granted. And probably the greatest thing that we've gained during this time is time. For many of us, we've been forced into this perpetual pause in a lot of aspects of our day-to-day goings-on in our personal life and in our businesses. And what that pause means for us in our businesses is an opportunity to reevaluate our business models and to pivot in adjustment to this global pandemic that we find ourselves in. I think a great example of this locally is what Cassandra Stokes has done at NUCS. She had to lay off a lot of her employees, and when Governor Abbott began that phase 1 of the reopening, she could have opened her dining rooms at NUCS to 25% occupancy. Instead, she chose to hold back and reframe her structure, her hierarchy, so that she could address the needs of both of the clients, the visitors that would come in and eat, and also her staff. So she now has somebody that's a lead over the sanitation process. It's those opportunities that in the rush of our daily life previously, pre-COVID-19, we didn't have the time to be afforded such luxuries. And so now we have this opportunity that we can reevaluate, readjust, and refocus our efforts. In line with that, the CVB has been offering for the last almost 2 years free hospitality training courses for companies or for individuals. It's through the Texas AgriLife, and it's called Texas Friendly Hospitality Training. We are continuing to do that, and I have been working specifically on some customer service best practices in light of this pandemic where we find us, because how we dealt with customers before is drastically different than how we address those same needs in this time and moving forward. So if anybody is interested in this time to work through that with your employee base, to get that training in there, know that we at the CVB are here to help you, and that is a free service. That's part of what we do, because if you think of it, if you trace it all the way back, there is a reason that travelers choose Nacogdoches, Texas, and it's our authenticity. It's the strong connections within our community that they sense. It's that small town feeling in a big city world. So what we can offer organically that other destinations try and replicate, we do that naturally. It can actually aid in the healing of our community as well as the healing of our economy. And I just encourage everybody to really step aside and imagine ourselves at the end of this, 18, 24 months down the line, when this is a memory. We know that Nacogdoches is still going to exist. Been here since 1779. We're not going anywhere. So we will get through this. We've got a ways to go to get there. But imagine yourself in the future and look back. What did we do to get there? What were the tools? What were the skills? Where were our attentions focused in that process? And let's spend this time in the now, in the present, to get us there. Is it improved customer service? Is it flexibility in work hours? Is it a change in business model? Start thinking of things like that. And if you don't have a business, think about different ways that you can support the businesses that are in your community, because it's a domino effect. When you help one, you help all. It's all for the greater good. There have been, in the travel industries, they're starting to do some traveler sentiment surveys so that we can start to forecast as we start to reopen businesses in industry, how that is going to affect travelers. So between April 9th and April 13th of 2020, the Matador Network did a sentiment survey of about 2,200 individuals from North America and around the globe. And briefly, the results were aside from the contrary to a lot of the other forecasts that are out there. For the most part, the global community of avid travelers still have a passion for travel. It remains strong, and in most cases, a sense of optimism is carrying them through this current stay-at-home and social distancing directives. Only about 4% of the respondents said that they're maintaining existing leisure or travel plans. That stands to reason. Fewer than 3% of the respondents have ruled out traveling in 2020, while 74% still view that as a strong likelihood. So the desire to travel is certainly still there and strong. 89% of respondents plan to travel within 6 months or less once travel is deemed safe. 71% of the respondents imagine traveling just as much, if not more, than they did pre-pandemic. This sentiment extends across all three of the high-risk groups, and those who self-identified as having no elevated risk plan to travel at slightly higher rates than they anticipated before. 71% of travelers are looking beyond their home and states for their next trip, with nearly half of them planning to travel by air, and 40% by car. And drive markets are our bread and butter. That's what we really like to see. And finally, outdoor adventure is what holds the strongest appeal for respondents, imagining their return to leisure travel, followed by culture, history, activities, food, and drink. Well, friends, that's some really great news for us here in Nacogdoches, because we've got some beautiful outdoors. Stick your head out the window if you don't know. And man, we've got culture and we've got history by the buckets. And then we've got some really dynamic and emerging foodie scene. So all of this is really good news. Win-win-win for Nacogdoches. And finally, I will leave you with the U.S. travel industry guidelines. This has really been a great example of how the business field and the medical industry can come together to really form a structure that can help guide us as a society through troubling times such as these. The travel industry has been hit especially hard during this. It's hard for everybody. So, know that this comes from a place of recognizing that this isn't easy for anybody. By the end of it all, tourism will have lost an estimated 8 million jobs as of May the 1st. And the travel-related economic impact of the coronavirus is projected to be 9 times worse than that following 9/11. The well-being of employees and guests is always the number one in travel and tourism. That's our number one priority. But a secondary objective is to restore the consumer's confidence in the travel process and in your business's ability to recognize the importance of health and safety measures. So travel is not going to be encouraged until the public health experts make it clear that it's the right time to do so. And so what we can do now, the action that we can take, putting verbs in our sentences, is to prepare for that moment when travel is deemed safe. And they focused on 6 areas: adapt your operations, modify employee practices, or redesign public spaces to accommodate those new safety measures. Consider implementing as many touchless solutions to the bare bones of what it is that your business does. Adopt and implement enhanced sanitation procedures, specifically designed to combat the transmission of COVID-19. And something Larissa mentioned in hers, it's not enough for you just to have those sanitation efforts. You have to think of a way to communicate that out. So it's not, in a lot of instances, it's just poor communication. You might have those practices in place and just not be communicating them. So there's a craft to marketing that information and pushing that information out there. So implement the sanitation procedures, but also communicate them as well. Promote health screenings for your employees and your workers. And again, let people know that it might make a difference to somebody going into a business if they know that the employees that are about to serve them have had their temperature taken, are washing their hands and sanitizing their hands after every customer interaction. Now more than ever is the time for full transparency in how you are caring for your customers. Establish a set of procedures aligned with the CDC and follow best practices in food and beverage service to promote health in employees and the customers. So there's been such good information in this phone call this morning. I think one of the things that stood out in Representative Clardy's piece was we need grace, and that is grace for yourself. Nobody's been through this before, and so we're going to stumble and we're going to fumble. And that's okay. Those micro failures are how we learn, so that at the end we can come through, and not only will we be survivors, but we will be richer for the knowledge that we've acquired in the journey to that place of survival. So I wish you all the best of luck. Take a moment during this week of National Travel and Tourism to recall and remember and reminisce with your family and your loved ones some miraculous, spectacular vacation that y'all had. Really celebrate those times of togetherness that come so often when we travel, and know that the CVB is here to support you guys. We're open 9 to 3, Monday through Friday now, limited hours. We saw 8 brave soldiers walk across our threshold yesterday. And we're here to support our businesses that have deemed it safe for them to open and start serving the residents and the visitors to Nacogdoches.
Thank you, Sherry. Representing Nacogdoches area anyway, Gary Lee Ashcraft.
Sherry, I'm going to Etoll Friday. That's some traveling for you. I have a real short report. Our COVID fund is being funded adequately. We're kind of in a position now to help our agencies who are not struggling, but their budgets are strained. People like helping other people eat are still servicing cars with food at the rate of about 500 a session. I want to do a quick shout out to Caroline Garner, who's our Executive Vice President. This is about the money. She has wrapped her arms around a thing called the Emergency Food and Shelter Fund that's been with us for a while. She was able to capture a CARES grant and combine it with the fund, and we'll be soon distributing in excess of $60,000 among several of our agencies, sorely needed funding. So that's my report, and let's move on. Thanks.
Thank you, Gary Lee. I appreciate that. Representing the SBDC, would you welcome Larry Cain, please? Good morning, Larry.
Good morning, Wayne and everybody. Hope everybody's doing well. Report on the Paycheck Protection Program. The banks have that figured out, and it seems to be working well. 2/3 of the latest round of $310 billion has been exhausted. Something like 2.2 million applications through the PPP. I know Commercial Bank recently reported publicly that they've done over 1,000 of the PPP loans, and I'm sure some of the other local banks have probably done that many or more. The EIDL program, economic injury disaster loans done directly with the SBA. They're no longer accepting applications at this time except for agricultural enterprises, farms and ranches. And this is the first time in history that the SBA has been authorized to make any loans to agricultural businesses. So if you know any farmers or ranchers that are struggling and need some financing, this may be a good place to go. And those are the only applications being accepted right now. SBA is still working through about 5 million applications for the EIDL program. And I do know of several local businesses and nonprofits that have received their up to $10,000 grant that's a part of that, but they're still waiting to hear from the SBA on the loan itself. A couple of resources I'll mention. I know Larissa mentioned the forgiveness on the PPP loans. It's very confusing. A lot of questions about it, and guidance is still coming out from SBA and Treasury. The Treasury website does have some really good frequently asked questions on the PPP program, and part of that deals with forgiveness. So go to Treasury and just Google the forgiveness frequently asked questions. The other resource is the Houston SBA office is doing a daily webinar on forgiveness at 9 o'clock each morning. And if you want to contact me, I can send you that link, or just Google SBA office in Houston and look under their COVID-19 resources and get the link to those forgiveness webinars at 9 o'clock each weekday now. One final thing, SBAs all across the country are receiving some federal funds through the CARES Act for disaster recovery. And in that regard, this weekend, you should see an ad in the Lufkin and Nacogdoches paper for some temporary part-time positions that we'll be having through the SBDC to assist small businesses with disaster recovery. So look at that ad. It'll be referencing a posting on the Angelina College website under Human Resources that has a lot more information. These will be independent contractors, and we should have funding for 3 of those independent contractors for the next 18 months. So we hope one of those positions will deal mostly with marketing and social media. We hope to have one that is focused primarily on healthcare, and then the third one will be general business. So if you know anyone interested in working as an independent contractor for the next 17 to 18 months, that's 40 to 50 hours per month, so it's nothing near full time, but we'll be looking for people to fill those positions. And that's all I have, Wayne. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Larry. And if you get that information to us, we'll disseminate that on those positions to try to help you find some folks. We're pleased to have with us a communications director for the city of Nacogdoches. Would you welcome Dr. Amy Mahaffey? Good morning, Amy.
Hello, thanks for having me on. I know we're getting a little long here today, so I'll try to be brief. So write down the date that I was brief, and I just want to be real quick with my report today. We are continuing to get testing numbers. The Emergency Operations Center is still fully operational, and they will continue to do so. a lot of what happens behind the scenes is helping our healthcare community obtain resources and kind of projecting ahead of schedule to look at any clusters or any trends that are taking place with the actual COVID cases. We're in close contact with the state health department, and they are providing lots of resources to Nacogdoches. They've increased their staffing here because of all of the cases in Shelby County and in Nacogdoches County. And as you probably know, the state, as part of their reopening, also did some mobile testing of their own throughout the state this last week. And they were here on Friday with the National Guard, and they were able to do over 100 tests, I believe. And I think that's combined with our testing center. And so we will continue on that course. The one change that can be expected in the next few weeks is we're looking to try to figure out how to sustain the resource to the community of people being able to call in and get pre-screened and go to a testing site that's safe. And so you'll be seeing some changes. We've been providing support to SFA and to the call center and all of the volunteers that are working at the testing center. But as you know, as this starts to slow down, call volumes have already decreased quite a bit. They've already reduced their hours at the call center. We will kind of continue to do that, and the city and the county and the emergency management personnel will kind of absorb that function and continue it like normal. The only change will be that beginning next week, there will be different providers in the community providing testing, and both hospitals will be doing that kind of remotely, if you will. So we'll really be expanding the ability to get a test to several locations instead of only having your doctor or the testing site available. And so what will happen is people will call in and be screened like always. And if they're determined to need a test, they'll be sent to either one of the hospitals or some providers to do that mobily, just like they're doing now with the scheduled test. And then if they're not symptomatic, that resource will still be available to provide some education about how to feel better and why they wouldn't qualify for a test and things like that. I would expect a release about the details with that here in the next couple days. And if there are no questions, I'll send it back to you, Wayne.
Thank you very much, Amy, and thanks for all you folks are doing. The communications has been extraordinary in keeping folks posted. I just want to point that out. You and Anna and the staff have been doing a wonderful job on that, so thank you. NISD, Nacogdoches Independent School District, representing them this morning is Les Lineberger. Good morning, Les.
Thanks, Wayne. Student nutrition continues to provide meals for Nacogdoches ISD children. There are 5 locations, and the hours and sites can be found on the district's website at nacisd.org. To provide an idea of how much of an impact our nutrition staff is having, they are providing more than 13,000 meals each week. Distance learning also continues this month, and the last day of classes on our academic calendar for this school year is May 28th. Planning is underway for a graduation ceremony. The plan we settle on will not look like what typically takes place at graduation. It will closely follow all safety guidelines and social distancing requirements. The next school year, while we're making plans as if school will begin in August as scheduled, we also acknowledge that no one really knows what things will look like 3 months from now, and it only makes sense to have contingency plans ready to go. And finally, this is Teacher Appreciation Week. On the district's Facebook and Twitter accounts, you can see some of the things taking place within Nacogdoches ISD to honor and recognize teachers. I encourage you, if you know a teacher, give them a word of encouragement this week. There could be no better time to let them know how much they're appreciated. Wayne, that's all I've got.
Thank you very much, Les. First of all, I want to thank all of our presenters here today. And and certainly acknowledge Jeff Mosley's participation on the call. I want to thank all of you that took the time to dial in. These calls have generated numerous stories in the Daily Sentinel and other media outlets, so I'm really pleased about that. And we welcome our friends from the media to help keep our citizens informed about what's going on. I hope everybody stays healthy and safe in the next week. And we'll have our 8th call a week from today. If anybody has any questions that you chose not to ask in front of everybody and you want somebody to respond to, feel free to email them to me or to the presenter, and I'm confident that they'll respond accordingly. With that, I hope everybody has a wonderful week. Thank you very much.